I would have just kept driving around.
It was an Officeworks too.
An office
They're
work,
charging for parking
and that's like $20 minimum.
minimum. Yeah, it was like a lawyer's office. They were charging every 5 minutes.
Right. Oh, that's even worse than a lawyer. A lawyer, it's every 6 minutes
Why is a lawyer every 6 minutes?
because it's divisible in an hour, I suppose.
Anyway, who did you invite? They're not here yet.
It's surprising because they're usually very punctual. Not many people know this, but my family is actually part of the Scottish aristocracy.
Oh.
So growing up, until the .com bubble burst, I actually had a governess.
A governess?
Yeah, but basically, it's like when poor people have au pairs, rich people have a governess.
Wow. Oh, I think I can hear them walking up the stairs right now. We'll get started. It's Friend of a Friend City, the improv comedy podcast where we get to meet some friends of friends. Hello, everyone, and thanks again for listening to Friend of a Friend City. I've got my friend Cam here today. How you going, Cam?
I'm going pretty good. Yourself?
Very, very well. Now, your guest has just arrived.
I'm so excited to see her. I haven't seen her since I was a little boy.
Yeah, right. So, can you introduce your friend of a friend, please?
This is my governess, Mrs. Blatchley.
Well, hello, Mrs. Blatchley.
Hello, how are we going?
How are you? Yeah, I'm well.
Listen, I could be better, but I've come here to support my old pupil, I guess you could say, but traffic was terrible. I'm not used to driving a car. Usually I'm in a horse-drawn carriage. But I thought I would put all that aside. I'm very proud of the young man that Cam has become, the young person that Cam has become. And yes.
Wow. So, Mrs. Blatchley, how long have you been a governess?
At least 83 years.
At least 83 years.
Yes, 83 years.
That's quite a tenure, and it also puts your age at you're a elderly person.
Listen, a lady never reveals her secrets. It's actually quite rude of you to mention my age.
I'm very sorry.
Yeah.
That is.
I will say, governesses, we join this sort of, some people call it a cult. We call it a society in which we cut our fingers and we draw blood. We put it on the contract, and that means that we live eternally while we have pupils and children to govern over.
Wow, Cam, did you know this?
This is the first time hearing of it, but like her skin is flawless.
It is absolutely flawless.
Yes, it's one of my hiring points as a governess. So
am I correct in understanding every time you sign a new contract, it kind of pauses your aging?
You would be correct. It's not really that it pauses it. It just goes really slow.
Right.
So even though I've been in governess for 83 years, I started when I was 17. So I did the first contract at 17. That one lasted about 10 years, I would say. And then aging resumed. So I had about 3 years to my next child. And then I did it again. So at 20, again, it just got really slow.
Really slow.
Yeah. So technically right now I would be about, I would say 32, but it's kind of like trying to measure in dog years. Like everyone says it's one way and then it's like a different way. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. So it's just best to never ask a lady her age.
Wow, it's the first I'm hearing of it. Incredible. Now,
I'm surprised that not more people are governesses.
No, for this chance at immortality, just to take care of a pupil.
People say wear sunscreen, but really it's be a governess.
Be a governess.
And sacrifice a little blood every decade. And one newborn.
How do you
What?
Oh. No, I agree with Cam's what there.
Did you say newborn?
Yes, but we don't have time to go into that. I understand we're on a strict schedule, and I'm a very punctual governess.
You are very... So I will ask the question I was about to ask. How did you come across Cam as a pupil?
So Cam's mother came to me when Cam was a wee boy, and said,
Just a wee boy.
no, wee boy, and said, listen, this one's unmanageable. I cannot handle all of the teething. I cannot handle all of the burping. This one needs to be managed. And I said, I'll whip this one into tip-top shape. And within a year, at 3 years old, I was wearing three-piece suits, was applying for his first job, applying for tenure at a university.
At
Had
what
not
age?
worked there yet.
Oh,
Yeah.
hadn't worked there yet.
Yeah. It was quite impressive. They considered the application heavily, but unfortunately they said, listen, you do need to have worked here for some period to get tenure.
And I knew to value myself at that point. Thank you, Mrs. Blatchley, for teaching me that. So I knew unless I could get tenure, I wasn't going to take the job.
Wow. Must have been sense to you not to get the job.
Look, I will say Mrs. Blatchley instilled a certain level of hubris in me that I think exists to this day. So I was quite appalled at the fact that I was not given tenure.
I fought tooth and nail for that one, but there was no point. They were not worth your time, I said, Cam. Not at all.
No, I wouldn't be the man today if it weren't for Mrs. Blatchley and her absolute dedication to me.
Do you have any fun stories from growing up with Mrs. Blatchley?
I remember Mrs. Blatchley was a very I would say jovial person. Like, she was strict, but she loved to have a laugh.
Love to laugh.
I remember we were one of the only families in suburban Brisbane to have what I'd refer to as a grand estate. We would be on horse-drawn carriage, and there was this one time when we were going into town in the carriage, and Mrs. Blatchley was already inside, and I was struggling to open the latch, and she pulled down the little window, and just kept saying, "Come on, monkey paws, open it, open the carriage, monkey paws," and I couldn't open it, and she made me chase after the carriage as it trundled down Old Cleveland Road.
Wow, that's.
And I think it built my character.
Must have built some calluses as well.
I haven't been able to open a car door since.
Do you just hear that? Do you just hear Mrs. Blatchley's voice in your head going, open the latch, monkey boy?
Yeah.
In my defense, their paws were quite monkeyish, so it was an astute observation. I would say that of the comedy, I'm much more a fan of observational comedy.
You love observational comedy.
Yes. Have you, I've just recently gotten into this. I don't usually have a lot of time, but I'm between children at the moment.
Wow, a bit of a...
And I just went to see Jerry Seinfeld's show. And whoo.
The television show.
Yes. I saw a live filming of it.
You saw a live filming of Jerry Seinfeld's television show?
Yes.
Seinfeld.
Is that what it's called?
I believe so.
Oh, yes.
Not many people know this, but Mrs. Blatchley, also took some time off and had quite a successful sort of stand-up comedy
Wow.
career herself. She was big on Comedy Central's roasts.
Yes. I don't know if you saw the roast of Alec Baldwin.
I can't say I did.
A lot of people mistook me for Ann Coulter.
You do,
And
you do share a shocking likeness.
And everyone was going, when did Ann Coulter become so funny? When did Ann Coulter have such observational, cutting observational jokes?
Yes, the roast worked really well. I was just pointing out a lot of his flaws.
What did you go for at Alec Baldwin?
Poor posture.
Just poor posture.
Poor posture was the primary one. I said that his Donald Trump impression could have been better. I don't know. Not many people know this. For a time, I was Donald Trump's governess, and I had to step away because he was such a rancid little boy.
Now that's interesting. That could be a whole book.
Yes.
Do you think part of you part of you wishes you could have molded him differently? Or is this too far gone?
I think I could have, but it hurt my eyes to see the shade of orange he was.
Wow.
Yeah.
I would say I think that perhaps Mrs. Blatchley is partly to blame a little bit for Donald Trump because
he did not seem quite pleased when I told him he looked like the product between his mother and a tangerine. Was not a fan of that comment. I thought it was good observational comedy.
Another great observation by Mrs. Blatchley.
But I do remember when I was under the tutelage of Mrs. Blatchley, that her motto was "Let's make Cam great again." And I just worry that perhaps if that's your sort of go-to, Mrs. Blatchley, for every child, that it may be stuck too much in young Trump's head.
Really built that hubris up.
Yeah, there are some flaws. I think that he's taken a lot of inspiration from my teachings, and while that's usually a good thing, I think that he's taken the worst parts.
So, Cam, you're following in the footsteps of some very famous people and obviously a very, very experienced governess. How does that make you feel just in everyday life now that you've grown up with this experience and the people around you haven't?
I'll be honest, it's tough adjusting to real life after you've, had a governess such as Mrs. Blatchley basically raise you from when you're a wee boy, a wee lad. And when you in everyday conversation, I have to remind myself that when I'm talking to someone, they haven't had my experience. They haven't had the benefits that I've had. I kind of have to bring myself back down to earth. I can't expect people to be on the same, level of intellect as me, sporting prowess. I have to dumb down my conversational skills because I'm just not going to have that witty repartee with everybody that I've come to expect with Mrs. Blatchley.
Yeah, and I dare say you don't have exactly the same shared experience as others do. What about the you said sporting prowess?
Yeah,
Miss Blatchley, have you governed any sporting stars?
One or two. I'm trying to think of the one that you would know.
I believe Andy Murray. You were the governess for young Andy Murray.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, I was also. I kind of did this as I governessed obviously young Cam here, but at the same time I also governessed Sam Kerr.
Oh, really?
And I taught her a lot of that observational humor as well.
A little bit of that. Did that come out in the news recently, a bit of that observational humour?
I did. It did. I was very proud of that one.
Oh, wow.
I think that you shouldn't have to go to court for what is very clearly an observational take.
And do you think it's well justified, especially given she was in England and you are a Scottish governess?
All I can say is there's a reason that she did not look fondly upon an English police officer.
An English Bobby.
I'll say no further.
Wow. You've touched a lot of notable people in your time. Have you got any good observational humour on either me or Cam?
Well, monkey paws.
Well, I mean, that's evergreen.
Yeah. I think something that I would say observationally about you, I think that your cat is too small, and I think that suggests suspicion on your household.
Wow.
And I think on the opposite end of the spectrum, Cam's cat is much too big, and that is probably indicative of society as a whole.
Wow, another cutting witticism from Mrs. Blatchley.
Aye.
I just don't get this, kind of playful barbs with anyone else I talk to. So it's really refreshing to be amongst equals for once, or equal.
Well, that is interesting, actually. So Miss Blatchley is your governess, but does she work for you or your family, technically?
I would say it's a symbiotic relationship. I think the first great learning of any relationship between a a governess and their ward is when the ward realizes that they are not better than their governess and the governess is not better than them. It's when you realize that you're equals and you're two sides of the same coin.
Mutual respect.
Yeah.
I will say, because obviously a large part of my role as a governess was to teach, there is one person that I know that I'm better than, and it's teachers. Would frequently join Cam at going to their school, and the teachers would teach a lesson because the only reason Cam was sent was because their parents wanted them to have that schooling experience. So the teachers would frequently be teaching the rest of the class, but obviously at the exact same time, I'm teaching stuff that's actually important, such as how to commit tax fraud, how to buy a Lambo cash, just really important stuff that a child needs to know. And the teachers were not fond that I would be speaking at the exact same time as they were trying to teach mathematics.
They didn't enjoy when they were, teaching, geography or calculus, and I had my my potter's wheel out, and
Yes.
Mrs. Blatchley was wheeling in a mini kiln.
Yes. That caused I almost got into a fist fight with one of Cam's teachers about that very thing.
About the kiln.
An absolute.
What happened?
They tried to touch my kiln.
Yeah.
Oh.
I said, if you do not remove your hands, I will strike you clean out.
And this is Mr. King. He was a giant of a man.
Yes. Mr. King and I...
Mrs. Blatchley is not a particularly big person.
She's 4'7".
Yeah.
4'7".
A 4'7" and Coulter.
I will say something I found out after. Mr. King is a gentle lover. I think that the discourse that created that day led to something more. And I haven't spoken to him in 10 years, but our love burned bright and fiery.
Nearly as bright as that kiln. Did Miss Blatchley have it out with any of your other teachers, or did you try to learn any instruments and she was in there?
Well, obviously, Mrs. Blatchley taught me the bagpipes. There was a time when the band teacher expressed that there was no place for bagpipes in a symphony orchestra.
Disgusting.
And Mrs. Blatchley, once again, had it out with what was her name? Ms. Christensen.
They tried to give Cam an alto sax, and I said, I'll be having no part of this, thank you. And Cam sat on my lap the whole time in band rehearsal. And I said, if Cam's going to be sitting on my lap, there is absolutely no way, in God's good name, that he will be holding this instrument that has neither a bag and neither a wooden stick to blow into.
Basically, when Mrs. Blatchley wasn't either fighting one of my teachers or making love to them, I'd be sitting on her lap for all lessons.
Did you make love to the band teacher as well?
Yes.
Not quite as gentle of a lover,
No,
if I remember Mrs.
aggressive
Blatchley.
lover. Aggressive lover. Haven't spoken to them in 10 years.
Wow.
Which is interesting because I'm 35 and Mrs. Blatchley stopped being my governess when I was 13, so obviously it had continued on for some time after.
It certainly did.
I can neither confirm nor deny.
You've kept a few lovers on your roster. Evidently.
Yes. I would say Little Black Book, is that what they call it? I've got 5 of them.
And they're not thin ones either.
They're tomes, I would call them.
Wow.
They're A4.
You need a bookshelf for these.
Yes, I have a slat in my house in the wooden flooring. I peel it up and it's filled with books. The issue is the rain gets in sometimes and the books warp so they expand even bigger, and then for a period of time during the wet season, the floor is just like the slat is digging in. You step on this slat and you trip and you destroy your ankle. And people ask, why don't you move the books? Who are you hiding them from? And I say, I'm not hiding them. It's just a good spot to put them. They say, well, clearly it's not. And I say, well, I'll be having it with you. And then we make sweet, sweet love.
Yeah, Mrs. Blatchley is very dedicated to minimalist design. So most of her belongings are kept under the floorboards, out of sight, out of mind.
The fridge.
Under the floorboards?
Yes.
And
I just
does
put some ice in there.
Does it still swell up during wet season?
Oh, it's terrible. It smells strongly of putrid ham.
You just store a lot of ham in there over the wet season.
Yeah, well, what else would you eat in the wet season? I wouldn't want to eat
Touché.
crackers. They'd get soggy.
But ham
Ham does not get soggy.
is eternal.
Ham is eternal.
Ham is eternal.
It just turns into jerky. Do I say a word of a lie?
You've got me there, Mrs. Blatchley. You've got me there. Now, Cam did say something interesting before of seen but not heard. What do you think about that approach to keeping children?
I think that there are some people that should see and should hear children, and I think other people shouldn't hear children. For instance, I think that a governess's job is to see and hear children. I think their parents' job is to not see and hear those children. I think on the other end of the spectrum, I think retail workers should have to see and hear children. I do think, however, alternatively, teachers should not have to see and hear children.
Wow.
Yeah.
Not
I think
see
their
or hear-
profession
they're
should be
just
made a moot
teaching.
point. I think they should only ever have jobs in past schooling education. So people that haven't gotten their high school diplomas, I think they should only be allowed to teach them.
Wow.
Sorry. I hate to say such a controversial opinion, but I will not hide my views.
Was Miss Blatchley this controversial?
She was always a controversial figure. Yeah. Obviously, at school, she caused a lot of friction. She, what I will say is, she did cause a lot of problems for my. I had a group of friends that I played Pokemon with. And Mrs. Blatchley had her own collection of Pokemon cards. She
Stacked deck?
stacked deck
All Charizards.
tricked a lot of kids into making bad trades.
I traded for fake Charizard cards.
But she was, at the time, she was a woman in her mid to late 20s, and we assumed that she was trustworthy. But no, she, anything Mrs. Blatchley turned her hand to, whether it was by hook or by crook, she was an expert at it, or appeared to be an expert at it.
Well, I feel that's one of the lessons we need to teach children is to not be so trusting. And I think I taught many children that because some of the cards I traded them were just pieces of cardboards I've crudely drawn Charizard onto.
You
You must be looking down on these as children as just fools.
Disgusting. Fools. I think that they're shame upon their families. They should have hired a governess.
We are coming up to about all the time we have today. Thanks so much, both of you, coming in.
This has been absolutely wonderful reconnecting with Mrs. Blatchley.
It is,
And I appreciate being made aware. I feel like I don't have a very good social media or an online presence for being hired, so I feel like this will really get me in the mainstream.
so you're looking for a pupil right now, obviously.
Yes.
What are you looking for in a pupil?
A wee lass or lad that is somewhat unmanageable but not terribly so. One that I could whip into shape and create an upstanding figure in, possibly a politician.
Wow. Is that what you're aiming for next?
Yes.
Political sphere.
I've got my eye on Peter Dutton.
As your next pupil?
Yes. He is a child, right? He strikes me as a man-child.
Look, none of us can be sure. Now, I just wanted to ask as one last thing is, do you have a favourite thing you like to do in Brisbane together? I mean, you haven't seen each other in a while, but what do you like to do when you're a wee lad together?
Mrs. Blatchley would take me down to, at the time, I think it was called Kodak Beach. Then it became Breaker Beach, then Streets Beach. Now I think it's just South Bank Beach. And we'd go there and we'd shout shark. There's a shark in the water. And then we'd laugh at all the people who'd run out before they you'd always see they'd be halfway up the sand when they the cogs in their head would start turning. They realize, oh, it can't be a bloody shark in here. I look a fool.
And then one time I brought in a real shark
Yeah.
just
Wow.
to keep them guessing. They said, well, there can't be a shark here. You keep doing this. And I'd
Yeah.
already thrown a shark in. Mauled 2 people.
It's kind of like the reverse, the boy who cried wolf.
Yeah. We got to teach them to all never get complacent.
Yeah.
Never
Yeah.
get complacent.
Always question what you think you know about the world.
Yeah.
Wow, what a story. Well, thanks so much, both of you, for coming in. Thanks, Cam. Thanks, Miss Blatchley. Cam, do you have anything coming up that people should know about?
They can always find me at Big Fork Theatre.
Always at Big Fork Theatre.
Yeah.
Sure thing. All right, thank you. And thanks, everyone, for listening to Friend of a Friend City.